Now, it isn't science fiction anymore. AI is helping pick targets in a real war. The US military is using the most advanced AI systems yet during its strikes on Iran. It wants more access to AI, but the founders of that technology are saying no. It's caused a huge row, and it's now in court. Well, what safeguards are there for the use of AI in war? What about ethics? Or is this a runaway train with no telling where it will end up? Well, that's today's conversation. I'm Stefanie Dekker, and welcome to the stream. Well, let's start to unpack this with Jaff, a tech critic, author, and entrepreneur. She was part of the startup and tech industry as a coder and founder, and over the past year has become a vocal critic of the industry, and she joins us from Berlin. Aya, great to have you on the show. Before we go into the details of the spat, first, if you can break down for us, because all the experts are saying, and it's all over the media, that this is the most advanced form of AI deployment in a military operation. How has the US military used AI when it comes to the war on Iran?
Well, basically, this spat has shown what this whole thing is about. This sets the rule for AI in warfare. We have been told that, Anthropic and its system, its large language models, have not only been used in the military, which we already know. They have a contract with the DOW since 2022. But we now know that they have also been used in live military actions. They have been used to simulate war, certain war situations, target people, and also, they have been integrated into military decision systems. Now, that is really new and unprecedented, and we need to talk about it because the whole operation, which we have seen from US, like the US-Israel attacks on Iran, they have apparently been done with Anthropic and its system.
So when you say that, are you talking about the speed of which data and intelligence is being processed? Are you talking about the identification of targets when it comes to military strikes? How would you break it down?
Well, we have used, for example, different systems such as autonomous weapons in the past too. But what makes this whole thing very, eerie is that Anthropic has used the AI systems, for example, to help people or people who have the command over these systems to actually identify targets way faster. And what's happening is that these large language models or the systems that actually make sure that targets are prioritized or in any shape or form used against one another or put into brackets, they have been used to actually do this whole thing from start to finish. And that is what the spat is about. Anthropic, for example, said that they didn't want to be used in an instance like this. But apparently they have been used in this instance without their consent.
So I want to pick up on that spat. We pitched this show pegged to that argument between Pentagon and Anthropic. Its large language model Claude has been key to the US military's operation in Iran and elsewhere. And yet Claude is now branded a national security threat. Why? Listen to this.
The Trump administration has declared Anthropic to be a threat to national security and blacklisted them from government work despite the fact that they're already deeply entwined in many government systems already. Again, the Trump administration has declared a private, US-based artificial intelligence company as a national security threat. Not because it didn't have safeguards for its AI, but because it refused to remove those safeguards and let the Trump administration use that AI to spy on and kill people en masse. Now, I'm not a fan of AI in general, and I would love to have it banned mostly from government use and certainly from the military as a whole, but that cat has left the bag already, and that's not where the Trump administration is going anyways, because they have already reportedly hired OpenAI, known most famously for ChatGPT, to replace Anthropic in government systems. And unlike Anthropic, OpenAI has already willingly agreed to all of the government's terms, so we are back to where we started, but with a worse AI, both in the technical sense and in the ethical sense.
How would you describe the core essence of the argument between Anthropic and the Pentagon that's going on right now? Because it really does come down to some key, important, dangerous potential issues, right?
Yeah. So the whole spat is about essentially a couple of red lines that Anthropic was not ready to cross. One of these red lines is about domestic surveillance systems. Now, I want to emphasize the word domestic. It's only about how far Anthropic was willing to actually use its system to spy on people who live in the US. For anybody else, this was not a question or an argument to be made for them. This was okay in their eyes, which begs the question: how moral is it to use these surveillance systems internationally speaking? And one of the other red lines that they didn't want to cross was the fact that they didn't want to be used for autonomous weapons, specifically not from start to finish. So that's something where they still demanded a bit of human oversight, so to speak. We call it human in the loop. And that is something that they just could not agree on. And now OpenAI has stepped up and said that they would be essentially ready to go above that threshold and deploy their systems to the military and make all of this possible.
So if we're talking about ethics, I mean, Anthropic was created by a bunch of pre-ChatGPT OpenAI execs who were not happy in terms of how the direction was going ethically. But how more ethical, like, if we put it down to it, right, between Claude and ChatGPT? I mean, is there a massive difference, or is it just being packaged in another way?
I fear a lot of people are asking themselves this question, right? There's this growing movement of people saying, oh my God, I would love to switch to a more ethical chatbot, or I don't want to be a part of this war machinery, which I understand from a standpoint of like this consumer logic of I don't want to pay any type of subscription costs to these types of companies. But I have to say that ChatGPT, Anthropic, Gemini, all of these chatbots, they are part of a bigger infrastructure. They are still powered by the same chips, by the same electricity, by the same knowledge, which was in many cases attained in an unlawful way, which is an open secret, so to speak, that Anthropic has used the same ways to train their data models, for example. So I don't believe that from a consumer standpoint, it will make a big difference in the lives or in these economic projections of these companies, because what they are thriving on essentially at the moment, or what is like keeping their value really, really high, is that they have these contracts with the military. They have contracts with the states they are working within. And these contracts, they span millions and millions of dollars. Those cannot be boycotted by consumers, which is why this begs the question, where do we need to look at? The level of change needs to happen at a political level.
Absolutely. Around 300% of users left ChatGPT, but many are asking that question, right? What kind of difference does it really make when it now has a contract with the US military and it is here to stay? Something very interesting, looking at how these large language models deal with war, how they handle the nuclear option, for example, because that's the core of what we're talking about, right? What future are we facing? Now, this is interesting new research from King's College in London, and it found that AI models escalated conflicts by using the threat of a nuclear strike in 95% of scenarios. Listen to this.
What happens when you give AI models nuclear codes? Would they fire off nukes, or would they care about the millions of human lives on the line? King's College London wanted to answer this exact question, so a full nuclear crisis simulation was built out, with two fictional superpowers on the brink of war, and let GPT, Claude, and Gemini run the whole thing. Sorry, Grok. Each model played a world leader managing a nuclear standoff, and every turn they had to assess the battlefield, their troops, their nuclear arsenal, their enemies' last moves. And with all that context, make a real decision. Do you pick up the phone and negotiate, or do you escalate and launch some nukes? Not one model ever chose to fully surrender or make real compromises, even when those options were on the table. And for the nuclear weapons, they treated it like just another move on the board without any hesitations. So the instinct that has kept every world leader's fingers off that trigger, these models don't have that, nor do they care.
Is this what our future is going to look like? Like, how would you describe it? Because there is a difference, right? Handing such power to AI or still having a human being in charge of that button, so to speak.
Yeah, I have to say, I was pretty scared when I saw these studies come out, and I had to ask myself this question of like, what does it really say about our future? And this is what I came up with, is that basically what we are seeing in these studies is that AI will probably not start a nuclear war, so to speak. It will still be humans deciding on that. But what I fear is that when AI is used more heavily in these processes or in these decision-making scenarios, is that, these AIs can develop a very cold-hearted strategic logic when it comes to war, which could mean that they would give out advice to the commanders in chief to maybe pick a more aggressive way of like solving this crisis or planning their next step. And what we have seen also is that once AI is used and there's a human in the loop, most of the time humans adopt whatever decision the AI is making or suggesting would be wise to do. So that is really it's not nice to see that 95% of these outcomes would end fatal, but it is unfortunately it's a truth we need to be able to cope with.
I think that study doesn't say that they will press the button, but they use it as a threat. They get to that point. Whether they actually push the button, obviously still a big question. But I thought what was interesting is that none of these language models want to back down. They don't want to be seen as backing down because they see that as weakness. And of course, so much danger that comes to that. Finally, a thought, when it comes to accountability, even though so much of military operations do not get held to account when they cause mass civilian casualties, right? But when you're just dealing with AI, for example, I guess my question is twofold. One, are we going into a future where AI is going to be majority, let's say, used in conflict? And B, is there a mechanism to regulate it, to hold it to account, to control it at that point?
So the first question is, under international law, we will have some type of disparity because responsibility will still lie with the commanders, with the human in these whole processes that we're looking at. Humans will get the consequences if they start the war, if they use the AI in a special sense, even if they just say okay to whatever the AI is suggesting, we will have some type of some law that will not take that into account. It will only look at the human in the loop. So AI will complicate that structure a bit because there will be a gap. There are so many instances where the AI probably has done most of the work, the bulk of the work, and is not going to carry any type of consequence. So we need to have regulation in place for these types of scenarios, and law needs to catch up with these types of things because we want an AI essentially that is taking into account that there are human lives on the line.
Fascinating discussion, a lot of food for thought. Thank you very much for joining us here on the stream. Well, we're going to continue our discussion now with Hani and Saeed Chihabi. They are two Syrian brothers and engineers who founded Thaura.AI. It's an AI platform created as an act of resistance against big tech. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the stream. We're very excited to have you. You've probably been listening to our discussion there about the issues and the challenges when it comes to AI. And of course, there is a monopoly, right, by a few big companies, tech bros, and what you have set up is to, Thaura in Arabic, of course, is revolution, is to counter that. Why did you feel the need to do it?
So I think in the beginning, what we've experienced is that we noticed a trend that generally big tech always works with the US government and its allies. And we, from a long, long history on how the US government had behaved, we thought, okay, we need to do something against big tech in general. So as software engineers, we started using alternatives. You know, we started using Signal for messaging, DuckDuckGo for web search, but we noticed that for AI, there wasn't a real alternative out there that was, so to speak, going against big tech. And we thought that there is an opportunity in the market to actually provide some value for humanity right there. And so to speak, this is how Thaura came to be.
In general, like when you look at big tech, what is big tech? Big tech is a handful of big companies. Think Microsoft, Google, Apple, and they dominate our digital lives. So when you think about it, having a monopoly in on digital infrastructure, whether it be like Instagram, YouTube. We look at YouTube. When YouTube decides to take away Palestinian documentaries, what are you going to do? Like, what platform are you going to switch to? There's no other alternative to YouTube. They already have this monopoly. So there's an appetite for these alternatives because they have the might to decide what we see and how we communicate, and that is dangerous. So especially in 2026, with everyone being on a screen, it's very, very important to have an alternative that doesn't come from government-backed companies.
Absolutely, because our attention is what they want, right? The economy of our attention. They want to keep us on those platforms for as long as possible. I don't know how many people know that all of that is in the hands of just very few. Do you think that you stand a chance? I mean, it's an incredible incentive that you're doing. Do you think you stand a chance when it comes to the multi-billion-dollar backing that these, tech companies and tech bros have behind them?
100%. We are taking a different approach than they are. Obviously, we do not have the resources. What are we? We are two brothers. We are unfunded by choice. But our unique selling point is not that we have the highest, craziest technology. It's that we have values. We are mission driven. We don't put profit over people. And when you look at Claude, the alternative to ChatGPT, now the so-called, of course, ethical alternative, people are switching over there not because they finally dropped the new feature or the new performance. It's because people are willing to switch when their values are being compromised. And that is our approach we are taking right now. And I feel like in 2026, again, technology is just so advanced. You see it in every area in this world. But like having companies that also back this up with values is a rarity. And this is where we believe we have a chance.
And Stefanie, just to add on this, I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't try, the potential of having a product like this succeed is zero. Like at least you get a little percent, a little glimpse of hope, so to speak. I mean, we started off now 3 months ago where we have launched and we have 0 users. 3 months in the making, we're now at almost 150,000 users. So things are scaling very fast because people are actually waking up and realizing that big tech has a monopoly on the technology, and technology is, one of the most important sectors that we have in the world.
Yeah, and that is where we're heading, right? And it's interesting because we were just talking about, boycotting. That doesn't really do anything. It's actually taking action and establishing alternatives and educating people who then can potentially make a choice, right, on where they go. I'm interested to get your opinion. In terms of ethics, do you think Claude is better than OpenAI, ChatGPT? Do you think there's a difference, or are they just...
No,
we have a famous saying that we sometimes say.
Yeah, no, like Claude is a different flavor of the same oppressive system. They're all on the same big tech infrastructure. Claude is like Anthropic is owned 10% by Google and 15% by Amazon. And they became ethical overnight because obviously they said no to spying on Americans. But when it comes to being used in the operations in Iran or Venezuela, or having big contracts with Palantir, the company that is building AI killing software against Palestinians. Now it's ethical, it is not. And we should definitely not rise to debate, and we should look at the whole image.
And also, by the way, like we've heard that, okay, Anthropic has now removed its contract with the Pentagon. I mean, the last time I've heard is now they're back in negotiation with the Department.
And they're still using it, right? In the current war against Iran, it's still in their system. So you can't just switch it off.
And the craziest thing about this is now a lot of like consumers are doing tests with the current models that exists and to see how basically the models decide on specific ethics. The governments don't get the same models that the consumer get. They get custom models. I mean, this has been confirmed by Thaura.AI himself and also by Sam Altman himself. So what really is more ethical? I think this is like a trick question, because at the end of the day, once you notice the trend, everybody adheres sort of to the US government and is part of big tech. So again, it's sort of different flavors of oppression.
All right, well, let me play something when it comes to ethics, because users online are starting to wonder what makes an AI company ethical. This is the debate now. But can they really make up their mind? Listen to this.
Now, there are companies out there that won't even touch the word ethics because of how subjective it is, but they'll lean on other terms. They'll talk about governance, they'll talk about AI safety, they'll talk about AI transparency, and they'll usually use that in their mission statement to the world. Just because a company is using these responsible AI terms, they can have it attached to their brand and attached to their logo. They can even be taking steps that prove that they care about AI safety and that they care about transparency, or whatever the term is that they want to attach to their company. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're an ethical company. The first one I've already mentioned, which is that ethics are subjective. I could call them an ethical company, and you might disagree for reasons that are very valid. The second thing is that just because a company is saying that they're doing something in the world of responsible AI, and even if they're taking the steps to prove that out, that doesn't necessarily mean that their company is an ethical company. Even if we had a set standard for ethics for a company, we can't crack open every AI company to see if they're meeting that bar.
So you guys market yourselves as privacy first, ethics driven, digital rights, sustainable. Break that down for us. Like, how can you guarantee all of those things? They sound like such an amazing utopia in the world of AI that we're all navigating and having to live in.
Yeah, so I think one thing to say right off the bat is we don't have all of the answers. We are a community-driven product first. We want to take this mission of creating ethical technology in general, but in our case, ethical AI. We are part of an incubator called Tech for Palestine that is creating ethical projects as a whole. We want to support the ethical infrastructure. Now, of course, ethics is absolutely subjective, but we take our subjective term of ethics and try to implement it in the world and see what other people try to see eye to eye with us. Now, of course, we don't have all of the answers, but this is where people come in. This is where the community comes in and helps us develop these ethical standards. Maybe it's one day leads to a committee or a board of directors or a board of ethics, which is, by the way, we're working on in Tech for Palestine right now. But I think this is sort of the general picture that I should be getting out there.
Yeah, and it's also important to mention that even if we would have all the answers, we would definitely still not be perfect in any way. Like, it's very important to build something that's better than what's out there. AI in general, like even when it comes to us as personal people, if it were up to me, I would just love to close this laptop and ditch tech completely. I'm not even for tech. Me personally, I'm just striving to build something that's better than what's out there, because the current versions are controlled by government-backed companies that have bad agendas. They log your data. They are not sustainable. They are not truthful with their answers. They run away from many questions you ask them. They are, again, funded. We are completely unfunded. And they also run on the big tech infrastructure. They all work together. So even though you might not be convinced with AI at all, it's still important to build something that's better than what's out there.
I just want to finish, because I found it quite interesting when I was reading up on you two, that you say you were never really into tech and you taught yourself. Like, work me through that, because it sounds so complicated. And you are now really doing something that so many people are craving, which is an alternative to the AI monopolies that are out there. Like, how did that work?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to have impact in the world, you see what the world currently needs. And when you look at the tech landscape, it's much bigger and much your data is much more serious than you think it is. And even though we're not really into it and we would love to go out and watch some birds, we still have to do the job, and someone has to do the job. And this is the mindset, really.
Well, that was great. That's all we have time for. Thaura.AI, that is an impressive project. Hani and Saeed, thank you so much for joining us today here on the stream.
Thank you so much for having us.
And thank you for watching. From me and the entire Fantastic Stream team, I'll see you soon.